and the customs officer insisted on checking his bags. And he said he had nothing to declare, but when they opened his bags, they found out these 2 bottles inside. What are those bottles? And he just said, oh, he'd been on pilgrimage to Lourdes, that holy site in France. He was a Catholic. Okay, can I finish the joke? Yeah, better. Been the Catholic holy site of Lourdes. And he said, well, what's in the bottles? He said, just holy water. And he took them out and said, but look at the label, Johnny Walker. And he said, well, I've got to put them in something. I just happen to have these old bottles of whiskey and I just pour the water in there. It's the only way you can transport it. And the customs officers, they don't have much trust in human beings. So he said, well, I'll take them out, let's open it up and see what's inside. When he opened it up, he said, this isn't water, this is whiskey. Smell it for yourself. And the traveller smelt it, and he said, why, my goodness, that is whiskey. Another miracle. Thank you for laughing like that. It makes the joke much better. Anyway, that's a whiskey joke. So anyway, a nice talk this evening. And one of the things which happened during the week is not really a thing which happened. The thing which I was focusing on is sometimes when people have any difficulties in their life or problems in their life or they don't have enough happiness in their life, sometimes it's because we don't allow our perceptions to see the positive side of life. Sometimes our perceptions, the way we look, are so conditioned, and sometimes by too much negativity, and we don't realize that how we actually see, how we feel, the names we give them, can sometimes change something which should be very pleasant into something which is boring. I don't know how many people, even when they say we meditate, say, well, what are you doing all the time? Just meditating? Just shutting your eyes, getting dull and dozy or whatever? And my goodness, I was very fortunate to have some good teachers when I was young. Even like when I was at university, and they taught you how to meditate, and straight away they were teaching you that this is a very positive experience. It's beautiful, it's delightful, but nothing's happening there. Yes, exactly. And so after a while I started to really love peace and silence and stillness. It was one of the most beautiful things which you could hear and experience. When I was a student, I liked rock music. I saw some great rock bands when I was young, even seeing the very first concert of Led Zeppelin in a Marquee Club in Soho in London. Seeing the Rolling Stones when I was only 11, and who was the other person? Yeah, I went to this a show with my brother. Only 6 people turned up to watch this band. You know who the lead singer was? Who was it? No, it wasn't Mick Jagger or Beatles. It was, what's his name again? Sorry? No, not John, not Paul McCartney. It was Rod Stewart, thank you, yeah. Rod Stewart. There's only 6 of us listening to him. It was like a private concert in those days. I love those days. But even though you heard these amazing musicians, later on in my life as a layperson, I started enjoying classical music. I didn't know why, but it was actually much more peaceful. And then later on you like listening to the sound of the wind in the trees. That was even more delightful. But then afterwards the best sound was the sound of stillness. When you close your eyes and got into meditation, that was so delightful. And I wondered actually why. These were just experiences which you had. You tried to find out why. Why do you get more delight when things settled down and were very still? And there was such satisfaction. I realized afterwards that what was happening, that every time that you had to listen to very loud music, it tired you. And when you were more still, listen to softer music, especially softer music like classical music, I noticed when you went to a concert and listened to some sort of 30-minute long performance, you had to be still. You had to be mindful. Every moment you had to be aware, because if you miss something, you miss the connections between the different parts of the performance. But the stillness was the best, because you couldn't say anything at all, otherwise it wasn't still. You can't just go around and say, oh, that was good. Then you destroyed the stillness. And after a while, when you're still, you're peaceful, energy starts to come back up in your mind. It's amazing how much we waste energy in our lives, especially in our brains. We waste that energy by complaining, by struggling to do things, to make things happen, to make things go our way. How much energy does that take up? Just imagine that you didn't try and change anything at all in life. You had nothing to do. You could just sit here and just listen and soak up the atmosphere, soak up the silence, enjoy the peace, what they call peace of mind. You don't get peace of mind by changing the world to be perfect, in your opinion. That can never be done. The reason is because people got other opinions, and they want it this way, you want it that way, and it gets just an argument, and it goes on and on and on. You never have any peace. But after a while, when we just don't do anything, we sit there and just be. Especially in a place like this. Our meditation hall here in the Buddhist Society of WA is not that bad, it's pretty perfect. It could be better. I mean, what we could do, we could have better meditation cushions. I remember once I said, how can we get better meditation cushions for you? And I thought we can have high-tech ones. Anyone wants to start a new business, because meditation is very, very popular in our world today. You get different compartments on your meditation cushions, and you have a remote control. So, you can actually inflate, if your back is a bit too sore, inflate the one in the back, so you go higher and higher and higher, it gets softer. If your knee's a bit sore, you can inflate that one so it goes up. And if you're too cold, you can actually heat it up. If it's too hot, you can cool it down. If you get sloth and torpor, which is a common problem in meditation, you can press another button which says, do you want a latte or so have that during your meditation. So these are modern meditation cushions to make you just more comfortable. But you can see just what that's doing, it's just making so much noise in your brain, just designing all these things which will never happen. But instead of that, you just sit here and just be peaceful, and the body vanishes by itself. And that's just so joyful, it's just gorgeous. Sitting here and just, you may have aches and pains. Look, I'm coming up to my 71st birthday. Yeah, I should have many more aches and pains than I do. Oh, this is aching. Oh, this is hurting. That's actually why, because I was trained in Thailand. Any Thai people here tonight? Goodness. Thai people? Anyway, when I was in Thailand, they used to have a word for the elderly. Like, I'd say Mr. Oi and Mrs. Oi. So all the elderly men were called Mr. Oi, and all the elderly women were called Mrs. Oi. And when I asked why, they said because when they get up from the seat, they go, oh, oh. And that was actually true. That wasn't a joke. It was funny, but that's actually what happens. And that's why they were called Mrs. Oi and Mr. Oi. But after a while, when the body relaxes, and it feels so good, no aches, no pains, this is actually also, you have much more happiness in your mind. The mind is stronger. This is one of the great things. I was telling some people this afternoon, and even telling them, a fellow monk, when I started this afternoon, I went to Adana, that's like people give offerings of food, and I was a bit tired this afternoon, and I got restless this afternoon. I didn't know really what to do, and I had a bit of work to do. Even monks have to do work, answering emails and deciding on all sorts of stuff. And then afterwards, I was meditating, and it wasn't really good meditating. I wasn't really doing it properly. And then afterwards, I remembered, just sit there and don't do anything. That's what I did. With my eyes closed, just sitting there, not doing anything, not trying to get rid of things. And the things disappeared by themselves. And that just happens all the time. Sometimes I'm stupid and forget my own teachings. But a lot of times, do you do that as well? After a while, the body became really relaxed. And the body really relaxed and all that. So the cause of the restlessness, that tiredness in the body, the tiredness is a negativity. You feel it's an ache, it's a pain, the body won't just settle down. And I was reacting to it to try and make it settle down. And of course that's why it didn't. And so I just let it go, let it be. It's okay, you can be as you are. And it settled down so quickly after I let it settle down. What does the word let go mean? It means you don't get involved, you let it happen. You don't do it. You give it permission just to do it itself. And when that happens, the body gets very peaceful, the mind gets very peaceful, we have a wonderful time. And that was just surprising, but very reassuring that this always happens, it always works. You don't have to settle things, you just get out the way and it settles itself. And this is one of the reasons why we learn in Buddhism just how to get into some incredible meditations by doing nothing. So often in life, whenever I was sick as a young monk, as a young monk I didn't know what I was eating. They just put it in your bowl and you hope for the best. One meal a day, and sometimes it was just really had bad tummies after that. And so I remember you learn how to deal with it. You didn't go and take any medications. You just learned to sit there and let it settle down. Like I just got out of the way and it happened so easily. And after you came out of your meditation, your body was really healthy, but more than that, your mind was very alive, alert and happy. This is what happens with our meditation. We change our perception. Instead of looking at this as a problem, it has to be fixed because there's something wrong with it. You learn how to be with it, and it disappears by itself. One of those teachings, I usually give this teaching on meditation retreats, but it's one of the favorite teachings. That was the monster teaching, the monster in the Empress's palace teaching. And if you probably heard it before, if you have, it's nice to hear it again, because I always change it a little bit and make it a little bit more alive. And so once there was an empress, very powerful woman, and she came to the Buddhist society in the evening, as powerful, impressive empresses would do. And anyway, while she was in the temple, this big monster, this terrible demon, was ugly, smelly, stinky, and very frightening, came into her palace. And some beings are just so frightening, so terrifying. You just take one look at them, and all these people are supposed to be security guards. They're supposed to protect the place. They just froze. Some of them just went into the broom cupboards to hide. Some went under the tables, sometimes behind the flower pots, because they were terrified of this monster. And so that allowed the monster to go right into the Empress's room and sit on her chair, her throne. And that was just one step too far. So all of the security came out and said, "Get out! You can't sit here. This is our Empress's chair." Imagine what would happen if on a Friday night, before I came in here, this big monster came and sat in my chair to give the talk. What would you do? You run away. So anyway, but after they saw him sitting and they thought, "Oh no, we've got to do something." So they said to the monster, "Get out! Get your butt out of that chair." I was going to say the other word. So, sometimes I think that's what people want me to say, but then I get into trouble from some people afterwards. They heard it on the internet and said, "Oh, please don't say that word." So anyway, get your butt off the chair, you arse. Oops. Anyway, so and it wouldn't do it, and they threatened it. got out guns and swords and all sorts of stuff. Get out, you're in big trouble, you're not supposed to be in there. But the weird thing which happened, that every unkind word, unkind deed, even unkind thoughts, that monster just grew bigger and more ugly and more violent, even more smelly. And that just made them get even more angry. And they were making so many threats to this monster that when the Empress came back home after listening to a very inspiring talk at the Buddhist Society, they're always inspiring, aren't they? Oh, thank you. When he came back, this monster was huge. Now, I haven't seen movies or TV for such a long time. I asked the monks once, what was the biggest, ugliest monster in the movies? And you know what one of the monks said? Oh, the biggest monster, the fattest monster was Ajahn Brahm. I said, no, that's mean. They were just laughing. I said, Jabba the Hutt or something. Does that make sense? Jabba, this big slug. So was it? No, because I don't know anyway. But anyway, this was a big ugly monster. Huge, very violent, and very smelly. It was so smelly that even the maggots crawling on its skin threw up. They vomited. Even the maggots couldn't stand the odour of this monster. But when the Empress saw this, the Empress knew what to do. Such a beautiful story. The Empress said to this monster, "Welcome. Thank you for coming to visit me. Why have you waited such a long time to drop by? Has anyone got you anything to drink yet? You would like a glass of water? Or a nice cup of tea? We've got some chamomile tea, it's very good for your health." And it was sincere kindness, because just come to the Buddhist Center. And it was such sincere kindness that this monster just shrank a little, and the smell got less, so the maggots could crawl with greater ease without getting sick. And that's when all the security realized their mistake. They were giving anger to this monster, and that was making the monster much worse. So then they decided, okay, now we know the solution. They got him some cups of tea, juices, orange juice, apple juice. Someone said, "Do you want something to eat?" We got some deviled ham sandwich, really good for monsters. Someone got a monster pizza for it. Some of them, they gave it a foot massage. Imagine how big monsters' feet are. They had so many toes on there. So they about 20 security just on each foot gave him a foot massage. He loved it. And even the neck massage as well, because had such a big head on his shoulder. So just over there a bit more, over there, oh yeah, that's really nice. It was so rare for the monster to get a massage. It was lapping up every minute of it. And so the monster was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so they gave the kindness so much. Again, they did order the monster-sized pizza, but apparently you can get monster-sized pizzas. They do. Okay. So that's a great dish to give to a monster if they come into your house. And they were so kind to this monster, they kept on shrinking and getting smaller and smaller and smaller until it got so small that one more act of kindness and the monster vanished completely away. And that was the end of the anger-eating monster. I called it anger-eating monster because that's the word the Buddha gave it. It's a story which is in the Yaka Samyutta in the Digha Nikaya. No, so in the Samyutta Nikaya. And I adapted it a lot. But it's such a beautiful story. But that was the essence of it, that some of these demons, they eat anger and their will and negativity, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. You say, "Welcome, thank you for being in here," and they start to disappear. You're changing your attitude towards things. And there's so many anger-eating monsters, especially in psychology. Instead of saying, get out of here, you don't belong, say, welcome. Welcome to your schizophrenia. Thank you for being in here. Instead of looking upon it as something it's supposed to get rid of. Bad memories. Welcome. Instead of looking upon them as something you have to discard and get beyond. Weird, isn't it? But how many times does psychology tell you to get rid of these things? And when you try and get rid of them, when you give them negativity, they get bigger and stronger, and they obsess you even more. Is that the way? And after a while, in yourself as well, all your faults you have. Come on, get out of here, you don't belong. What do you mean you don't belong? They're here. I don't know why they're here, but they're here. And they make you who you are. You perceive it in a totally different way. You can't really change even the biology of your brain, but you can change the way you look at it. Change your perception, and after a while, that is the way that these things vanish and disappear. This is not just Ajahn Brahm making up stuff. I've been around a while and gone to many sort of conferences, and that was one of the things, I tell the story a lot, the conference over in the mental health unit in Singapore a few years ago, where the professor of the schizophrenia unit, this big shot, he said he was a Catholic, but he still wanted to I don't know why I say he still wanted to. He was a Catholic, but he wanted to actually invite me to give a Buddhist blessing to his unit. So it's weird, you're a Catholic. I said, but you won't tell the Pope, will you? I said, no, I won't tell the Pope. and he said that, I asked why, and he said, because that's how I treat schizophrenia in Singapore. I said, how do you treat schizophrenia? He said, I don't. I treat the other part of the patient, realizing schizophrenia is not the totality of that person. Whatever you are, whoever you are, you may have your faults. Please don't focus on them and think that's all you are. You're much more than that. That's why even that, again a powerful story, the two bad bricks in the wall. You know, so often it was the case that people are so judgmental, and what they judge is the bad things about themselves. We criticize ourselves. The first wall I made over in Bodhinyana Monastery 38 years ago, I laid the bricks myself, because you know what I did before I was a monk? A theoretical physicist. You blow things up, but you don't actually lay bricks on a wall. But anyway, I laid bricks on the wall, and afterwards 2 bricks were crooked. And my response, I was careful. I don't know how that happened, but I was glad it happened, because my response was I wanted to destroy that wall, blow it up, or get a bulldozer to push it over and start again. I was embarrassed. I took it personally. I was supposed to be a perfectionist. I made a mistake and everyone could see it. What's wrong with that? Is there anybody in this room who's never made a mistake? Put your hand up. Okay. That's a mistake. Now, you said you made a mistake. It's amazing how people think of themselves. One person said, if everybody's getting tired during one of your talks, you just ask them, you said, how many people in this room are above average intelligence? Half of you are above average intelligence, the other half of you are below average intelligence. Be honest. That's what average means. It's just perceiving with a bit more rationality. But we always think that we're above. Do you really think you're above average intelligence? No, that's our problem in this world. That sometimes we perceive from a sense of ego and sense of self, which actually changes our perceptions totally different. Because I made 2 mistakes, what's wrong with that? But to me, every time I saw it, I was just so embarrassed. But after a while, there's this great, I forget who the person was. They came to the monastery, they saw that wall, they said it was a beautiful wall. And our first comment was, have you left your spectacles in the car? Are you visually impaired? Can't you see those two mistakes? And what they said next was so important. They said, yes, I can see the 2 bad bricks, but I can see the 998 perfect bricks. Now, I've told that story so many times, but it has a huge meaning. The 998 perfect bricks, I couldn't see them before. They were right there, but every time I looked at that wall, every time I thought of it, I'd only look at my mistakes. That was the nature of my mind. It perceived the errors. And when I looked at other people, that's all I saw, their mistakes and errors. That's why, and I looked at myself, I saw my errors. I couldn't be kind to myself or love myself or feel I was okay, because all I could ever see was the 2 bad bricks in my character, 2 bad bricks in my life, the mistakes which I'd made, the things which I hadn't done, not the things which I had done. And I realized that really caused so much problems in my life. So once I saw there was 998 good bricks, just an average, for every 2 bad bricks, I realized I wasn't such a bad guy after all. When I saw the 2 bad bricks in the government, I realized there was 998 good bricks in the government. Do you agree? Have I gone too far? Then you were much more at peace, with things like politics. And over the years, being a monk, you get to know people, and you see sort of presidents and prime ministers and stuff, and kings and queens and stuff. It's interesting life as a monk. You're supposed to just leave the world, but the more you leave the world, the more the world follows you, follows you for advice. It's weird, isn't it? Okay, yeah. Here's a nice little story for you. I think I told a story of the monk ringing up the meteorological office, didn't I? That was last week, yeah. A similar story up in the Himalaya mountains, because there's lots of monasteries over there. There was this trekker. He was like walking in the mountains. And, he was Australian. He was actually from Sydney. And he was taking so many photographs, of the scenery and stuff. He missed the main group, and he got lost. Now, getting lost in the mountains of the Himalayas is not recommended, because in the evening there's bears there. Even like one of the nuns, I forget where she is now, that she came to visit once, and she told the story before she was a monk, a nun rather, that she was trekking in the Himalayas with her boyfriend, and they just rested at a nice little place to rest in front of a cave. And she started meditating in front of the cave, and her boyfriend meditated on top of the cave. And then the bear came out. And these bears, they just attack you. So he said this bear attacked her, and just put his really big bear, his jaws on her head, trying to crush her skull. That was just really serious stuff. And then she remembered some of her Buddhist chanting and started doing chanting, because she didn't know what else to do. Screaming for her boyfriend to help. She learned from her past that was not going to help at all. I shouldn't say that, but I did. So anyway, she started doing some chanting, and the bear, for some reason or another, just opened its jaws and ran away. So she was actually saved. Of course, she was bleeding heavily, and then they took her to the nearest village to get some medical attention. But I remember asking her, did it hurt having the bear, almost crush your head? And she said, no, it didn't feel any pain at all. The worst part of the experience was the bear's bad breath. Because bears don't brush their teeth after they eat anything. It was disgusting, she said. And so she recovered. But also afterwards, that she had a headache for years. And so after a while, she went to the doctor and said, where's this headache coming from? Never had a headache there before. So they gave her, not the CAT scan of last week, the real CT scan of her brain. And this is no exaggeration. What they found in there was a small tree sapling growing in her brain. What had happened is when the bear sort of tried to crush her head with its teeth, one of the teeth had a little seedling in from where the bear was eating, and it actually implanted a seedling in her head. It was only a small seedling, but they could see that, and that was the reason for a headache. Very simple operation to, keyhole surgery, and took the seedling out, and she was fine afterwards. So that's one of the dangers of being attacked by bears. They implant trees. I don't know what type of tree it was in there, but it could have been a rare tree because they were allowed to take it out. Sometimes when you try and take down a tree in Australia, you've got to get permission from the council first of all, because it might be heritage listed or whatever. Anyway, I don't know why I told that story. Different ways of perceiving. So anyway, just stories of just going up into the mountains in the Himalayas. Now the real story I wanted to tell was the one... Well, people actually ask me about this. I haven't told this story for years, but this was that's why gentleman, I half told the story. He got lost. And getting lost in the Himalayan mountains or the foothills is really, really dangerous. So the sun was going down really quickly. But he was lucky. He saw there were some lights in the distance. So he made for those lights, and it was a monastery. An old monastery, been there for centuries. And so, they allowed him to come in because apparently he wasn't the first Westerner who got lost in that part of the world. And the abbot, really kind monk, he said, well, look, the place is pretty full, but you can actually have my room for the night. It's got like a nice mattress there, sort of thing you're used to. It's only for the night. In the morning, we know where the group has gone to. We'll take you there, and you can join up with your trek. So they put him in the abbot's room overnight. It was very comfortable. They gave him some food for the night, but about midnight, he was woken up by this sound. You called it a sound, but it was almost like music. But it's much better than music. It's the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard in his life. And it brought tears to his eyes. And it was just so peaceful, so melodious. I didn't know what instruments it was, but he used to say afterwards that it was even better than anything you could hear at the Sydney Opera House. It was really fine, fine music. And it put him into a very calm and deep sleep. And when he woke up in the morning, he was so rested, and they gave him some food before they were going to take him over to the place where the rest of the trek was. And he couldn't help asking, he said, what was that music last night? And the abbot just stopped and said, oh, you heard that last night? He said, yeah, it woke me up in the middle of the night. What was it? And the abbot said, sir, I'm afraid I cannot tell you the origin of that sound. Only monks are allowed to know that, and for you it's forbidden. And so what the Australian did, he got out his wallet. Okay, how much? He said, no, I don't. You give me the whole thousands of dollars. We still won't tell you. The only way that you can find that sound is you have to become a monk yourself. And so he got really fed up. He said, look, you've got to go now, otherwise you'll miss the trek again. So this guy from Sydney joined the trek and eventually came back to Sydney. And what that noise was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard in his life. That just bugged him so much. He went to every psychologist and therapist he could find in Sydney because he couldn't even forget it. He couldn't put it aside. And after 1 year of suffering, not knowing what it was, he said, well, nothing more to do. He just got the plane to Kathmandu, went up into the Himalayan mountains, found that monastery, knocked on the door, and said to the abbot, who remembered him, he said, I was here about a year ago, and I heard this amazing sound, and I can't put it out of my head. It's obsessing me. Please tell me what it is. And the abbot said, look, I can't tell you. Exactly, said this man. So, you say I have to be a monk to know the meaning of that sound. So please ordain me as a monk. And the abbot said it will take over a year of training before you can become a monk. I don't care. I'll do that training. Please ordain me. so I can hear what that sound was. So he entered the long, hard training of being a monk, learning all the chanting, learning all the rules. And 12 months later, on the anniversary of his arrival, they gave him the ordination. And as soon as he was ordained, what did he ask the abbot? I'm a monk now. Please, you must tell me what that sound was, the most beautiful sound in the world. He said, okay, look, I'll do better than tell you. I'll show it to you tonight. Come to my room at midnight, and I will show you. So he arrived, of course, about half an hour before midnight. He was so excited. He'd given up so much of his life to become a monk, and so he could find out the meaning of this sound. And now he was a monk, the abbot could tell him, even better show him. So that night, about 10 minutes to midnight, the abbot let him into the room. And he drew a curtain aside from the room. Behind that curtain was this very ancient wooden door. I mean, like really old. It must have been built there hundreds of years ago. And the abbot from his desk took out these ancient keys. And the first one was a wooden key. And he put it in the keyhole, turned the wooden key and opened the door. Almost as soon as he opened it, you could hear the noise, the music. It was like heavenly music, not the sort of thing you'd hear at any concert hall. Much, much better than that. And he was so excited, he waited such a long time to hear this. And he went down the passage with the abbot, and there was another door. And that was an iron door, solid iron. Must have been dug from the mountains again centuries ago and cast into this really heavy iron door. You could see the rust on it. It hadn't been opened for years. Had the iron key, put it in the latch, turned the key and opened the door. And of course the music was even more sonorous, even nicer to hear. And it went down the passageway a bit further, and the third door was a silver door. It had lots of jewelry in it, like precious stones. They're getting closer to the source of this most amazing music. And by this time he was shaking with not with anxiety, anticipation. He put the silver key in the silver door, turned it, and it opened. And he could see the last door was, as you would expect, a golden door. Solid gold, but embedded was precious jewelry. Ancient heirloom of this monastic order. And you could hear the music so much clearer by now. And it was just so thrilling. Again, he was crying, it was like weeping. It was so beautiful. And by the time they got to that last door, the abbot got out the gold key, but then stopped and said, look, what's beyond this door, the source of this music, is almost supernatural. Are you okay to look at this? Because some people who look at this, some monks who see it, go crazy. I mean, it's not just ordinary stuff, it's really supernatural, it's powerful stuff. Are you ready for this? And the abbot, he got to know this abbot over the last year or two. And of course, he trusted the abbot. The abbot wasn't playing games with him. So he thought for a while, he said, look, I've come so far. If you don't show me, I'll go crazy. For sure. So please, open the door. Okay, said the abbot. He put the key in, and he opened the door. And what he saw inside was, I'm sorry I can't tell you because you're not monks. I can tell you afterwards. Why is it that everyone wants to know? There's some things in this world you'll never know. I tortured you. So sorry about torturing you. But that's one of the stories. that what that's actually doing, the obsession, we have to know things. Change your perception. You don't have to know everything about life. You just have to know enough to know how to be peaceful. Of course, I've told that story many times before. I even wrote it in one of the books, and you can see just how it just builds you up, like an advertising campaign. You really want it. Even sometimes people send emails to me, Ajahn Brahm, please tell me. I want to say that you told me. Where is that monastery? But anyway, this is actually teaching something. Do you really need to know those things to be peaceful, to be satisfied, to be calm inside? And of course you don't. This is one of the reasons why that when we learn how to look at our perceptions, it's our perceptions which cause all the trouble. So you're at peace with yourself. You don't have to know everything in this life. You don't always need to be correct. You don't need to be the best monk in the world, the best person in the world. Just learn how to be yourself and be at peace with yourself. Change the perceptions about life. You know, what foods do you like and what foods don't you like? I'm not sure what you like and what you don't like, but sometimes there's these restaurants and it's in the dark, so you can't see what you're eating. And then after you've eaten something, you say, oh, that was really nice. And then you find it's the worst food you thought you didn't like before. It just shows you how perceptions, when you take away the sight of the food, sometimes what you eat you don't know. You know that some years ago I went to Rolling Stone Primary School, and they invited me to give a talk to some of the students there. And I didn't realise who I was talking to, and they were grade 1s and grade 2s. How can you teach Buddhism to grade 1s and grade 2s? You know, can you actually tell that story about the most beautiful sound in the world to them? Or talk about the Four Noble Truths to grade 1s and grade 2s? And I had no preparation, but what I did there when I went into the room, I had to think on my feet very quickly. Actually, I wasn't standing, so I thought on my ARSE. I was sitting down. And I just asked them, so how many of you like, oh no, how many of you don't like rice pudding? You know what rice pudding is? You don't have to know, but anyway, how many of you don't like rice pudding? And you know what grade 1s and grade 2s are like, these little people? We know 2 or 3 people put their hand up. They did not like rice pudding. All the other kids, the boys and girls, they were looking around, they saw these 3 or 4 people had their hands up, so they put their hands up as well. And after 2 or 3 minutes, the whole about 60 kids had their hands up. They agreed in grade 1, grade 2, Rolling Stone Primary School, they didn't like rice pudding. Okay, put your hands down. Now, how many of you have ever eaten rice pudding? And 2 kids put their hand up, and everyone else laughed. You taught Dhamma to grade 1s and grade 2s. They got it straight away, and so did their parents, and the teachers as well. Why is it we say we don't like it? We've never even eaten it. How much of life is like that? We say, oh, I can't meditate, when you've never even tried. How many people say, I don't like this, but you don't know what you're saying. That's why some of the food which I ate, even here, that once I ate, what was it? I had some spaghetti, and you know, it had some ice cream, but the ice cream fell on top of the spaghetti in my bowl. So I had ice cream on top of spaghetti. Was that nice? You sure it was nice? Do you like ice cream on spaghetti? How many of you eaten ice cream on spaghetti? You have? I have. So I can actually say with honesty, it was disgusting. So a little bit of that's actually, why is it there's things we don't like, we never even seen it or done it, we just take it on other people's opinion. I just also remember, just very quickly, there was one of our members, Pauline Shield, those of you may have known her, she passed away last week. We're not sure when the funeral was going to be. But anyway, went to, I remember one anecdote with her. We went on pilgrimage to India, and part of the pilgrimage was actually going to the Taj Mahal. I don't know why we went there, but said people wanted to see it, so I was dragged along. I remember sitting at a distance from the Taj Mahal in Agra, in India, and just asking myself, why is this beautiful? It's only beautiful because you're told it's beautiful. When I actually look at it from a distance, what's beautiful about this? It's a bit of an exaggeration, and it almost ruined. Many people suffered because of building that. But people said it was a work of art. What's a work of art? Is it really beautiful? So I was questioning myself there. I remember Pauline coming up to me and said, "It's a bit OTT, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, well done." She too was challenging her perceptions. We were taught to say, "This is beautiful." And when you actually look at it, challenge your perceptions. It wasn't that beautiful. I've been around a long time now, 70 years. Sometimes I see these photographs of these supermodels when I was young. When I was young, a young man growing up, I thought, oh, they're really hot. And I look at them today and say, I'll never go out with them. Fashions change and perceptions change. And that's why, which ones can you trust? So see if you can actually just look at your perceptions, understand them. It makes life much easier when you challenge some of them. And there's food you thought were disgusting, actually quite nice. And there's diseases which you thought were terrible and challenging, they're not a big deal. And just people who may be different, we think they should be stigmatized. They're not, they're just part of our nation, part of our world, part of being a human. And we accept and understand. We have a much more peaceful life that way. I've been talking too long now, so I'm going to be quiet now. It's 10 minutes to 9. Is there any questions from the floor? And then we have questions from the internet. Comments, questions, complaints? Sorry? Strawberry. You'd love vanilla's a bit better. Okay, I have to try that next time. Strawberry ice cream or spaghetti doesn't mix. Anyway, so any questions from the... Oh yeah, from Eddie. Yeah.
Ajahn Brahm, you give a very powerful talk tonight.
Very good.
Yeah, I don't know whether people realize or not.
Yeah.
Very powerful. No. See, the problem with us now in the world, okay, we lack empathy. You're talking about the monster? Okay, yeah. We lack empathy, We lack, like, we have so much, we only think of ourselves, our ego, the thing. We fail to see the other person's point of view,
Yeah.
If only we can put ourselves in the shoes of the other person,
Yeah.
and deal with the situation, a lot of problems would be solved.
There would be, indeed. And
Yeah.
sometimes the monster is just, that's how they were born. So they're just monstrous. So when you're kind to monsters, sometimes this is with big animals. Because in my life, living in the forest, you see amazing beings there. I remember even this one dugite over in Serpentine is about 3 meters long. It's a huge dugite, and the dugites are some of the most venomous snakes in Australia. And it just came up to me while I was on my retreat. I could hear that something was coming because all the kangaroos were running away. And it came right up to me, and I was washing my bowl. And so it said hello, and I carried on washing my bowl. It could have attacked me so easily and killed me. But I didn't feel afraid. I said, no, it's a hot day. It shaded itself next to my hut. That's how I knew it was 3 meters long. I built that hut. I knew how long that wall was. And that's actually where it was shading itself from the sun. And the strange thing was it had its head facing the other direction. It felt totally safe. And I always realize if you give animals a sense of safety, they'll never harm or attack you. Because let them have the perception you respect them.
Can I say just quickly Ajahn, about
Yeah, sure.
this situation now? No? I know a lot of people is going to hate me or won't believe me, okay? But doesn't matter, okay? Yeah. Currently, you know, I was just thinking, you know, like say for example, the war in Ukraine, you know.
Yeah.
You have Russia, you know, fighting Ukraine, okay? Yeah. On the surface, you know, oh, it's bad, you know, Russia doing invading Ukraine, this thing, you know, without any like a, you know, you know, like they see it as bad, I think. Yeah. But have you ever thought, you know, why does Russia have to do this thing? You know? If you can think of this way, this thing, okay, lower ourselves and put yourself in other person's shoe, you know, then we can solve a lot of problems in this world. See? I'm saying this with good intention. Please don't be angry with me, anybody.
Yeah, just want to see what we can do to try and stop the suffering over there. Because it's not just even like one person dying. It's just many other people who have relations in that country get afraid. And even like people in Russia, like on the Wesak Day over here, there's one Russian, Alex, you may be listening this evening. He said, I'm a Russian, but can I please take the 5 precepts from you on Wesak Day? I said, of course. Because, you know, just being a Russian or being Ukrainian, just if you saw them, you wouldn't know who was which. They're human beings. They're bigger than that. So anyway, just we hope that anger, worst thing is that somebody hurts your family member and you want to fight back. That just makes it worse. Anyway, we got some internet stuff. No internet questions? No internet questions? Oh, we have, okay. But sometimes whenever there's conflict like that, I end up making jokes. Like when I was over in Melbourne, somebody offered us, sticky date pudding. It's very nice, sticky date pudding. But then instead of actually calling it pudding, one of the monks there, he couldn't pronounce pudding that well. He called it, we got some Putin. What type of Putin? Vladimir Putin, Rasputin? No, sticky date Putin. So every time I'll see sticky date pudding from now on, I always call it Putin. It's actually very delicious. Anyway, Tim, with love from Flint, Michigan, USA. Hello, Ajahn Brahm. I've been wondering since Wesak what the 6 sentences you mentioned in the story about the guy who wanted to be reborn as a dog until he found out they're fixed. 6 sentences? I don't know what you mean by 6 sentences, but I know that for the dog, the reason why he didn't want to be a dog, when he found out the dog had to be taken to the vet to be monasticized, to be desexed. So I don't know, 6 sentences in the story about the guy who wanted to be reborn as a dog until he found out they're fixed. I'm not quite sure about that. Anyway, from Queensland, when dealing with mental exhaustion, other than meditation, what can I do to help? My body has energy, but my mind is so tired that it's manifesting physically. I'm struggling, thank you. Yes, this is a common disease, like mental tiredness. First of all, if your body has got energy, do something like running, or like running a personal sport. Don't play with others, because others, they interrupt your relaxation. But even like physical running or walking is even better, depending on your age. That means you're alone, you're quiet, but don't go thinking about what you're supposed to be doing or whatever. Just like walk or run and just be with nature. Nature is a good way of getting energy back in the mind. One of the reasons is because you can't change nature. You go walk by the ocean. It doesn't matter what you want to do. You can't change the ocean. Especially on a calm day, it relaxes you. So, being in a quiet, natural surrounding, going for a walk, seeing the sunset or something, that will calm you down. But of course, meditation is a much more efficient way of doing it. Next one from Malaysia. How to overcome the fear of being seen with a tendency to hide from people due to different experience from the past, please don't be ashamed. And sometimes people are so cruel the way they stereotype you, they label you, and I was going to tell a joke, but it's a bit of a naughty joke, so I can't tell it. I was just thinking I can adapt it to make it a bit... No, I won't do that. Anyway, it is true that you may have done one bad thing in your life, and that sort of stigmatizes you. Even you may not have done a bad thing. I remember some years ago there was he was put in jail for about 40, 50 years, I think, for murder. And eventually that one of the journalists took up his case, found out he was framed, he was released. He was also a Buddhist. He actually would ask for books from us and listen to the talks. So after he was released, he actually came here and listened to a few talks. But he said that he was so embarrassed being out in public because he was like a famous person. And because of that, he eventually decided better to go back to England, where they wouldn't know him. And so you can see that how people are stigmatized. Oh, you're that person who got out of jail, or you're that person who does terrible things. That's why I keep trying to teach people, look, you're not a prisoner. You were in prison, that's all. That's much more than that. You're not a murderer, you're not a terrorist. You're much more than that. And that's one of the reasons why I never actually said about that 2 bad bricks in the wall. I really respect this man. He was one of the prisoners coming towards the end of his sentence over in Karnet. And I don't go to Karnet anymore, but many other monks do. One of our monks will be there this evening teaching the meditation group in Karnet. But this guy has been going around saying, because he read my book and he heard about the 2 bad bricks, and he goes around saying it was only 2 murders. And good on him. I don't know why you laugh there, but good on him. What else has he done in his life? A lot of good things. There's only 2 murders. He's being honest, but realizes he's much bigger than those things which he was put in jail for. And that's actually the way you take people who have been put in jail, stigmatized as prisoners, stigmatized as murderers, and actually get them past that, through that. And they become wonderful people afterwards. So that's a tendency to hide from people due to difficult experience from the past. Difficult experience, but you're much more than that. So after a while you get some confidence, be with kind people, and those kind people will probably bring you up, and then bring up your energy, your confidence, and you have a wonderful life. This is Leon from Frankfurt. Dear Ajahn Brahm, is nirvana the end of rebirth and all consciousness, just like the atheists imagine that everything ends with death? Is nirvana, it's actually a word which was used by all people, even kids in the time of the Buddha. When the flame went out on an oil lamp, "Mummy, mummy, the flame's nirvana'd." And so what is the flame? The flame is caused by 3 things: the wick, the oil, and the lamp. The heat, sorry. The wick, the oil, and the heat. When those 3 things come together, there's a flame. When the flame is extinguished, it's because one of those causes is extinguished. The wick is burnt out, the oil is exhausted, or the wind blows the heat away. And they use that as that's what Nibbana is. It's gone out. So there are many types of Nirvana. You've got Nirvana with things remaining. What they're talking about here is Parinirvana, complete full Nibbana. That's when everything, what arose, a causal process, has now stopped. Nothing has been destroyed. That's the difference between atheists and Buddhists. Nothing has been destroyed. There was nothing there to begin with. It's just a process coming and going, and now it's finished. Just like this talk. and the questions have now nirvanaed. Thank you for listening. Very good. So now we'll do the Arahang Sama Sambuddho, and then we see what happens afterwards. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. I wish you a pleasant evening, and those who've got questions can come up and ask them.